Welcome back to Fade to Chat, Golden Age Cinema. Today, Cindy and I are going to look at one of the most recognizable romantic comedy partnerships of the studio era, still in the studio phase as classic cinema is, Send Me No Flowers, the third and final collaboration between Doris Day, Rock Hudson, and Tony Randall. In this one, they're married. And I was surprised because I hadn't seen this film in a long time. And frankly, it usually is kind of background noise for me whenever it comes on TCM or something like that. I might have it running just because, period kind of piece in terms of that. So I haven't paid a lot of attention to it over the years. But they're married, and we can talk all about that. Cindy, why don't you tell us a little bit about the premise of the film?
Well, this was one I recommended, yes. And it stars Doris Day and Rock Hudson. And as you said, they're married in this film. And he is an extreme hypochondriac. Everything that somebody could possibly have, he thinks he has, from headaches to stomach aches to bone chips in his elbow, he has it. And Doris Day is just like rolling her eyes the whole time, like, oh, George, you're just ridiculous. You're not sick. You don't have any of these problems. So he decides he wants to have a checkup. And he overhears inadvertently the doctor talking about another patient who is dying, and he's going to be dying within weeks. And he overhears the conversation. He says, oh my gosh, that's me. And, the doctor says, well, I wouldn't tell you anyway if you were dying, as long as your affairs are in order. And so he thinks it's him the whole time. And he tells his best friend and neighbor. And he says, well, you better find somebody else for your wife to marry. When you're gone, you better find her someone else. So he tries to find her a suitable partner, and the whole time she thinks he's having an affair, which he of course is not, because he's acting very strange, and she thinks he's having an affair. And there's a whole series of misunderstandings and mishaps, and the next door neighbor, Tony Randall, is drunk the entire time because he's so upset. I love Tony Randall in this movie. He's so upset over losing his best friend, and he decides he's going to write the eulogy too. So a whole series of mishaps and misunderstandings, and in the end, Rock Hudson decides he's going to confess and say that yes, he really is having an affair, and she doesn't believe him. And again, so many misunderstandings and mishaps, and the very end of the movie, I should have gone back and said this before, but he buys a cemetery plot. He goes to Paul Lynde, of all people, and buys a cemetery plot for 3 of them. He wants one for himself, his wife, and her new husband. And at the very end of the movie, he's trying to convince her that he's not having an affair. And Paul Lynde shows up at the house with the deed to the cemetery plot. And he told her by mistake that, that her husband sent him a check. And she's like, oh my gosh, he really was not having an affair. And he said, no, not at all. And she said, there really was no other woman. He said, no, but there's another man. He said, we made provisions for another man in the cemetery. And I love Paul Lynde in that role because at the end he said, oh my gosh, he said, I could tear my tongue out. He said, I wasn't supposed to tell you. It was supposed to be a surprise. And she said, oh, okay, so just take the deed back and mail it to my husband, and that way he can surprise me. So the very end of the movie, Rock Hudson comes home. She realizes, of course, that he was telling her the truth all along, that he was not having an affair. He's not dying. And her bags are packed there in the living room, and she decides that she's going to forgive him for his affair. And he's like, "What? You're going to forgive me?" And she said, "Yes, George, I decided to forgive you." Then the doorbell rings, and it's their kind of a creepy guy from the golf club who's kind of trying to
He's
call
basically picking up on women who are
or getting
separated.
a divorce. Yeah,
Yeah, hitting
he's
on them.
he's 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 a real creep, and he's standing at the door with this bouquet of flowers, red roses, and George answers the door. Rock Hudson answers the door and smacks him in the jaw with his fist and grabs the flowers. In the meantime, Doris Day has run to the kitchen to get champagne and two glasses, and she comes back in and says, "Oh, who is at the door?" And he said, "Well, the delivery man, sort of." And he has the flowers in his hand and gives them to her, and they, hug and kiss, and everything's wonderful. And the very, very end of the movie, he's holding these roses in his hand, and he gets um, cut by the thorn. And he's like, "Oh no." And she said, "Oh, honey, what happened?" He said, "Yeah, the thorn cut my hand." He said, "Do we have any iodine?" And she's like, "No, we don't." So again, his hypochondria is showing. He had cleaned out that entire medicine cabinet. That's another part I'm sure we'll talk about. He had this huge medicine cabinet just full of bottles and ointments and bandages and anything you could imagine. And in a fit of anger, she threw it all out the window. So there is nothing in his medicine cabinet at the end. And here he is asking for iodine because he's pricked his finger with the rose.
So I've got a bunch of questions for you. We'll work through them at some point. But interesting. Clint Walker plays the guy
Hmm.
that he finally thinks is going to be a potential good suitor and mate for Doris Day.
Right.
I watched this really for Rock Hudson's acting in this,
Okay.
only because I hadn't paid much attention to his acting before. I'm going to suggest a film later on that is a completely different side of Rock Hudson that you can look at and remind me to suggest that to you, and
And I know which
I'll
one,
get it
but
in. Ah, okay. Guess which one?
um, Pillow Talk?
Oh no,
No?
no. I am thinking about Seconds.
About what?
Seconds. Yeah, I
I
think it's
haven't
a.
seen it.
I'm looking it up right now. I think it's a
I've
John
seen that one.
Frankenheimer. Uh,
Second.
I don't want people
That's
on my
Rock Hudson
drive.
too?
Yeah.
No, I
Yes.
don't know that
It
one.
is 1966, and
Hmm.
it is a John Frankenheimer film. I don't want to stray too off our subject of this film, but Seconds is a really intense film. So this was done a psychological thriller done 2 years
Hmm.
after this film, Send Me No Flowers, and it might have
Okay.
been him trying to get out of the the popular icon roles,
Yeah.
but it is basically the story of transformation, physical transformation of a client,
Hmm.
of a person, and then him having to deal with this new identity. And it's quite a powerful film. It's a little intense. It's Frankenheimer, so it's going to be
Hmm.
wild, but strange camera angles. He's going through his own identity crisis, so some of that's portrayed on it. It's Seconds, John Frankenheimer, 1966, with Rock Hudson, Frank Campanella, and John Randolph in that film. That is something if you want to see a completely different kind of acting piece
Hmm.
from Rock Hudson, that's the one to look at.
Okay.
So
Never heard of it.
when you suggested Pillow Talk, I'm like, no, this is not Pillow Talk. Pillow Talk, I think, was more of a kind of a farce. I
Yeah.
do like that this film is more plot centered than
Hmm.
shtick centered, and Pillow Talk
Hmm.
was kind of shtick centered
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
Um,
I like that they're married, that there's not
yeah,
that whole pursuit kind of thing. You're already married.
yeah. Well, the thing too that I noticed was there was a big thing about showing married couples, in the same bed
Hmm.
during that time, and like Dick Van Dyke and
Yeah.
his show, they had separate twin beds,
Hmm.
and in all sort of shows were at risk with that. They're in bed together, and this is a
That's true.
1964 film,
Yeah.
so I found that little thing. I just saw little things during the film that
Yeah.
I was more attracted to actually than the film. The film for me was kind of bubblegum, and
Yeah. It
it
is.
wasn't there wasn't a lot of depth or a lot of
No, it's a very feel good, lighthearted movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my question is, why do you like this one so much? You were real excited about this.
Well, again, like I just said, it just makes me feel good. Brings you back to a simpler time. I love that style of architecture in the 60s. I love that type of home, just the warmth of it and the coziness of it. And um, not that I like to be old fashioned, but I just love that time period. I love Doris Day. I love to hear her sing. I think her voice is very beautiful. But I like to watch like the interior scenes. Yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at the home thinking, I love that back staircase going upstairs, the
Yeah.
fireplace, the kitchen. They bring the little toaster over and plug it in. They're setting it on a table. Just little things like that. The telephone. It's just, it was a beautiful house, the big patio. And it was just a simpler time. And just, you knew your neighbors and the milkman, of course. Kids today, people today, like, what do you mean there's a milkman?
Yeah.
Um, just it brought me back, I guess, maybe toward my childhood. I was born in '59, and it just reminded me of maybe a nicer time when things were just happier.
Yeah, but the flowers were always in bloom. The weather was always
Hmm.
nice.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't know if that's the
Yeah.
reality of it, but
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. So it's when you want to watch something that's, just nice.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be a nice, pleasant movie with nothing's going to make you cry, nothing's going to upset you. It's just a feel good movie. And Tony Randall, absolutely loved Tony Randall in this movie. I thought he was
Where was
outstanding.
Tony Randall's wife? That was it because he
She went
talked about
away.
being. She went away.
She went away. Put her on a train. Kids went to camp, and she went somewhere. Yeah, I don't know where she was. He talked to her in the very beginning of the movie. Her
Hmm.
name was Ruth. In the very beginning, he said, Ruth, somebody was there. Yeah, and there they showed their bed too, because at one point Rock Hudson and
That's
he
it.
had to share the bed, which was interesting. Yeah.
You hear a lot about Doris Day's uh, loving relationship with Rock Hudson
Hmm.
as actors together.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to trace back much in terms of Tony Randall. It would be interesting to find out sort of his perspective, unless you found something on
I
how
did not know.
his work with Rock Hudson is. So yeah. Um, so Rock Hudson, do you have any comments in terms of his acting style, his process?
I had read that a lot of people didn't like him in this role because he was not the leading man romantic and they
Hmm.
didn't believe him as a hypochondriac. I did. I thought he played it very well.
Yeah,
And yeah, I believed him.
he didn't care for doing that. He didn't care for this movie at all.
No, he
I
did
mean,
not.
He just did not like the premise of what it was. And one little bit that I found was Julius J. Epstein did the screenplay for this. This
Hmm.
is the same guy that won an Oscar for Casablanca. And I'm like, that is an artistic stretch to go from
Yeah.
writing Casablanca to this movie, which was surprising. But Hudson thought movies about dying and death were not funny, and he had a
Hmm.
particularly hard time with his role going
Hmm.
to talk to Paul Lynde, who was trying to sell him cemetery plots. He just thought that whole setup was just
Right.
not funny. It's not something you joke about.
But yet it was funny. It was very funny with Paul
Yeah,
Lynde.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Doris
Yeah.
Day, any comments about her role in this?
Well, I thought her her expressions, and I'll just say this because I had been accused of this myself. Her eye rolls. Oh my gosh, she rolled her eyes so many times in the movie. Every time she was so exasperated by him, she's like, George, all the time she was rolling her eyes. And I've been told I have a tendency to do the same thing, and I have to be careful with that. It's like, oh my God, yeah, roll my eyes. I've been told I wouldn't be a good poker player because of that. But I thought the beginning scene, when she's stuck outside, and I'll just say that's kind of every woman's nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
I've worried about that myself. I'll go out sometimes in the morning in my pajamas, not a robe and a nightgown, but in my pajamas to collect the garbage or something. It's like, oh my gosh, if I get locked out of the house, what are you going to do? I thought that scene was great. And I wanted to comment too on the music because the music to me fit this movie so well. It was almost like a cartoon. If you've ever watched,
Mm-hmm.
cartoons, the music is so timed to the characters that what they're doing. In fact, I did when I was teaching, we were doing a whole unit on animation,
Mm-hmm.
and I had the kids watch a real short cartoon that they were familiar with, and then I had them watch it again without the sound. They're like, "Oh, what a difference." I said, "Do you see how the sound is tied to what's happening in the cartoon?" They're like, "Oh yeah." And I really thought that this movie, the music was tied perfectly to what was happening in the scene. Like when she dropped the eggs
Mm-hmm.
and when she was, had her slippers on, those fuzzy slippers, and they were stuck in the eggs, and the music was just perfectly. It was like a trombone and wow, it was just I can't even describe it except that I thought it was timed perfectly. And I don't know if it was a stunt double or her actually falling into the kitchen window
Mm-hmm.
when she finally got into back of the house and had to climb into the window. Um, but I thought that whole opening scene was just terrific.
I follow some stuff on Reddit, and one of the subreddits I follow is Lebowski, and it's all people talking about the Big Lebowski. And I don't know if you've seen that movie. Oh,
Mm-mm. Mm.
yeah,
It's on my
it's
list.
out of our time period, but it's a film that you should see because it's just so wild. It's Coen
Yeah,
Brothers,
the Great
and,
Lebowski. The Great
and
Lebowski.
the Big Lebowski,
The big. Okay. How do you spell
and
Lebowski?
Lebowski.
Okay, I'll look it up. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something you could have fun with.
Okay.
It's all over the place. It's a Coen Brothers film. You can expect that, but it has a lot of quotable scenes. And there is one scene where the dude, which is a Lebowski, that's mistaken. It's a mistaken identity film essentially. Is
Okay.
in a quick stop and he's trying to buy some cream, I think, because he's into White Russians. And he's like, "Who is this Gnudsen?" And he was probably reading Knudsen, which if you look at the scene where Doris Day is stepping on all of her groceries, there
Mm-hmm.
is a product that is probably sour cream or something like that, but written on it is KNUSDEN. Knudsen
Mm.
was a popular dairy
Mm.
place, and they created dairy products. So as soon as I saw that, I'm thinking that's the dude. What the dude is talking about in The Big Lebowski. Who's this Knudsen when he's trying to find a product in a quick stop?
Okay.
So again, I was not paying attention to the movie. I was paying attention to these little bits that came up.
Yeah.
I don't think, and I rolled back the scene where Doris Day is in the runaway golf cart, and it's pretty clear it's not Doris Day in the runaway golf cart.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of back projection where she's reacting
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the actual exterior shots were that's not Doris Day.
Yeah.
Tony Randall.
It was great.
Yeah,
No, you don't agree?
a little Tony Randall goes a long way for me.
Oh no, I love him.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I mean, I remember him on Carson all the time and stuff like that, and he just kind of maybe the acting that I should be looking at got in the experience that I had in his seeing him interviewed as or guests on talk
Mhm.
shows got in the way of my appreciating what he's doing from an
Okay.
acting standpoint because he seemed kind of a snob in most of his
Oh.
interviews.
Oh.
And so yeah, it's I always I can't see the comedic part of him in this, although
Hmm.
being drunk and stuff like that, that's all well done, but I still see him and I think he's kind of a snob. And
Okay.
that's what's affected my vision of him. And then of course he was in The Odd Couple for a long period
Right.
of time, and
Right.
so it adds to that me mixing his art his roles with who he is as
Hmm.
a person. So
I enjoyed the scene with he and Rock Hudson when Doris Day had thrown him out of the house and he had to come next door and spend the night with Tony Randall. And he was still writing his eulogy. And Rock Hudson was not being very nice to Tony Randall. And Tony Randall kept crossing things out of it. He's like, okay, um,
yeah,
keep it up, buddy. You're not going to have the shortest eulogy on record because he said I had to cross out like loyal friend, devoted husband. Because there was one time when Rock Hudson said something about, remember that time when Ruth was gone and you
yeah,
were oogling somebody, and he's like, oh, keep it up, buddy. Because he said, I'm gonna tell Ruth on you. And he said, oh, keep it up. You're gonna have the shortest eulogy on record. And he had the right there next to his bed. He's crossing it all off. I
yeah.
enjoyed
A
that
couple of
scene.
other characters I want to mention is
Hmm.
Edward Andrews, who plays
Yes.
the physician.
Yes.
And you see him in everything during that time. He was a
Yeah.
character actor that was
Hmm.
in television as well as film, generally light film. He played more comedic than heavy roles in
Yeah.
anything, or supporting comedic than heavy roles.
Yeah. I looked him up. He
The
was
one
in
thing
Bell Book and
yeah.
Candle.
Oh,
But
okay,
never.
yeah, yeah,
And Bewitched, and yeah, a number of TV shows.
yeah. I can't. There is a scene where he comes back from his fishing trip,
Hmm.
and I paid attention to this more than anything else. But he has a sunburn line or a sun where he's been
Yeah.
obviously wearing his hat the whole trip that he's been away at and been out in the sun, because he has this
Yeah.
line right across his forehead that's
Yeah.
above the line is just white, and below the line
White.
is makeup, but it's meant to look
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
I think he's gotten sunburn.
Hmm. Yeah, that was a good scene.
And I think the only other person I'd want kind of a reaction to is Paul Lynde, and his role and his portrayal. I'm used to seeing Paul Lynde in more of an over the top kind of way.
Hmm.
He was subdued, I think,
Hmm.
appropriately in this
Right.
film. And he's able to show sort of his inner anxiety with that scene at the end, particularly with Doris Day, where he's explaining the check and what had been set up.
Right.
I don't know. Paul Lynde was cast and typecast many times.
Hmm.
And, he had his own personal background and history, which influenced his life and influenced his attitude about entertainment and about the entertainment system. He also was, as some reports were, notoriously anti-Semitic, which is
Oh, I didn't know that.
interesting. Yeah,
Hmm.
and yeah, people there.
Hmm.
You can read through that and find that pretty clearly. That
Didn't
there
know
were
that.
many times he had outbursts on the set and was anti-Semitic
Hmm.
in some ways.
Hmm.
But an interesting character actor, I'd have to say, probably best known for being the center square for a long time on Hollywood Squares, but also
Yeah.
Bewitched and
Bewitched.
other
Yeah.
other common TV shows.
Yeah.
Any other characters you want to talk about?
Well, I had to look someone up.
Okay.
She the when they were at the train station at the end of the movie, and Doris was getting ready. You know who I mean? She was
No,
getting
no,
ready
but
to.
I'm surprised you looked her up. But go ahead.
Oh, I looked her up because I couldn't
Yeah.
stand it. She looked familiar, and Doris stays at the train station, and Rock Hudson's trying to get her to, not leave, and they're having a conversation, and all of a sudden you see this woman in the background in a bright yellow coat, and she kind of turns, like you can tell she's eavesdropping. She's like, "Ooh, this is good. This is juicy. I want to hear what they're saying." And she walks a little closer, and finally she just gets right in between the two of them and interrupts them and gives her opinion on their situation and what she thinks they should do.
And the
Go
choreography
ahead.
of that whole scene is they're
Yes.
facing each other and then
Yep.
they move. And
Hmm.
then in the background, you see her
Yes.
move over with them. It
Hmm.
was interesting to watch that
Yeah.
placement. And
Yeah.
you
And
know
then,
early on from that she's going to interject something. She's
oh
going to get
yeah,
in the middle of it.
yeah. So I looked her up. Her name is Helene Winston.
Anything about her background or anything about her acting that you could find?
Not really. I mean, it was very. It just said that I think she just played like little parts like that. She was kind of a character actor. They just pop her in different places. But I thought she looked familiar to me. Maybe you can find something on her. And when you were
Yeah,
saying about go ahead,
go
the
ahead.
choreography of that film, of that scene, it was similar in the end. I noticed when the doctor, Morrissey, was talking to Doris Day, and he was, saying about, George, what a hypochondriac he was. And they were standing apart from each other in her living room. And there was one part, I forget what she said and what he said, but they walked toward each other. I played that two or three times, and it's like, okay, he said that, she said that, and then boom, 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 they walked right toward each other, and then I think that's when he said, well, he's the biggest hypochondriac, that you've got, and he tried to give her that fish. He had a huge bag of fish, and
Yeah.
she said, "Oh, I hate fish," and stormed up the steps. And he said, "Well, I'll have to eat those little fellas myself." But it was a huge bag of fish.
Yeah. And he had
But there was
a car full
something,
of them. Yeah.
a car full of them, but they walked toward each other very
Deliberately.
much deliberately in that scene as well.
Um,
So,
to answer your question, Helena
yes.
Winston, 1922 to 2004.
Okay.
She's known for some films I'm familiar with, A Boy and His Dog, because it's a Harlan Ellison science
Okay.
future
Mhm.
fiction kind of thing, and it's terrible. But the Harlan Ellison is a remarkable author,
Okay.
and he passed away, I think, in the last couple of years. Double Trouble, Policewoman, What's the Matter with Helen? She's been on
Mhm.
Hill Street Blues. She's been in Mel Brooks' Life Stinks. Uh, the Devil and
Mm.
Max Devlin. She was in that film. So The Shaggy DA, A Boy and His Dog. I mentioned that. Policewoman. Sanford and Son, Rhoda. So she was a character actor.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
where
That's
you
where I
might
know it
have
from.
seen her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clint Walker. Uh, I I'm not sure what you think of his role. I think he probably is the only man that I think could kind of challenge Rock Hudson
Hmm.
for the strong, kind of powerful replacement. All the other replacements seemed a little too disingenuous.
Right.
And so, if you had any experience or knew about Clint Walker,
I did not, although I thought the comment he made when he first realized who Doris Day was at the country club, he said, "Oh, I thought you would have married someone like Cary Grant." Did you catch that line? She said, "Oh, well, I think I did okay." I wasn't familiar with him. I read that he was 6 foot 6 inches tall,
yeah,
and the scene where he had to get out of that Jaguar was quite interesting. Trying to get him out of that car when he stood up. And that was a similar scene to Rock Hudson, when he tried to get out of that roadster in Pillow Talk. Do you remember that?
yeah.
Yeah, it was a similar scene.
Well,
And
Clint Walker had quite a bit of history. Had quite a bit of film roles. He was in Maverick,
Hmm,
the TV series. He was in 77 Sunset Strip. At the time, he from 55 to 1962, he appeared in a TV series called Cheyenne, and he was in
hmm,
107 episodes. So he's main character
hmm,
in that. His name was Cheyenne Brody. He also
hmm.
played other characters in that TV series. But there is a comment that Rock Hudson makes to him. He's got his feet up on a desk or somewhere, and Rock Hudson says, "Don't you ever wear shoes," because it's obvious
Yeah.
he has cowboy boots on.
Hmm.
And that, I think, is a little bit of interjected humor into the fact that he was kind of known for these Western and action type of films. He was in The Dirty Dozen.
Hmm.
Um, he was in a bunch of Yuma, Bounty Men, Kodiak. One that I have to see, The Mysterious Island of Beautiful Women. And his last noted
Okay.
appearance was in 1998. Um,
Okay.
so he was an interesting character actor. Died in 2018,
Hmm.
but really was this huge, iconic looking man
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
you could see Doris Day's character kind of falling and fawning over someone like him,
Hmm. Hmm.
up to or greater than the standard of Rock Hudson. So,
Well, and they needed someone like his presence to
right,
rescue her from that golf cart.
yeah,
Now here he is on that horse, which I thought that was interesting. The horses are riding along the golf course there, and yeah, I mean, who else could rescue her? Had to be a large man.
yeah. I something else. Oh, there is a scene where before she goes to the golf course, her friend is saying, "Come on, we have a tee
Oh
off
yeah,
time," and
yep, yep,
she's
yep.
in the kitchen replacing Rock Hudson's sleeping pills, which were
Yep.
Seconal.
Second all, I wrote that down.
Seconal with sugar.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that joke, I mean, first of all, Seconal. That joke
Wasn't
would
that in
not
the
work in this
apartment?
day and age. Yeah, right.
Was you
Same
said
thing.
that was in the apartment? Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, and of course, having worked as a drug counselor, I pick these things up. But when she
Yeah.
said Seconal replacing his sleeping pills, I'm like, people
Yeah.
were prescribed Seconal for sleeping pills, and but man, I couldn't even dream of that now. But that was the level of where they were
Yeah.
with
And when he takes
pharmaceuticals at the
two, he
time.
falls asleep faster. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I
Um,
took note of that as well. Hmm.
yeah. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add into this. There are some production highlights and things that we can talk about if you're interested.
Sure.
One, Gene Kelly was originally signed to direct. Man, I can't see that. I cannot. Well, he was really involved in movies later on, and to the point where he was almost directing. He was kind of a difficult person
Mm.
on the set, from what I understand. But he
Mm.
left the direction role after failing to secure Warren Beatty and Bobby Darin for the lead role, which he just said, "No, nah, just differences."
Yeah.
We kind of mentioned this is the third and final of the trilogy of films that Rock Hudson was
Hmm.
in. So the third pairing was Lover Come Back,
Hmm.
or the middle pairing, I should say, the middle of the three films.
Hmm.
But this one, Send Me No Flowers, was their third film. I tried desperately to look for this when watching the movie, but the exterior shots of cars driving up and down the road, I really wanted to see the Munster house. It was a Universal backlot. And in fact, when looking for images for this, one of the images that came up was just an overhead shot of the Universal backlot. But
Hmm.
apparently, a lot of the storyline uh, has cars driving down these streets. And in the background, you can find houses that were used in a lot of TV shows and
Hmm.
and some movies. One of them, of course, being the Munsters. And I think I had to look past the houses to see what looked like the old Munster mansion at the top
Hmm.
of the skyline. I didn't, it's not like they drove past it, but it was, you
Right.
could see it in the skyline of the street they were driving down, at least the top of what would have been, I think, the Munsters house.
Wasn't there the one from Don Knotts, The Ghost of Mr. Chicken?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. That was a funny movie.
Um, I want to bring something up because this takes us in a little dark
Uh-oh.
direction.
Okay.
It started with me chasing down the idea that this film, Martin Melcher, who was Doris Day's husband,
Hmm.
they'd been married for 17 years. He died 4 years after this film in 1968 from a heart attack.
Hmm.
And was basically her husband and business manager. And one of the agreements that he signed, apparently, for money coming back was that he signed it with the Chrysler Corporation. And so all
Hmm.
cars in all Doris Day films have to be Chryslers.
I read
Not
that.
only the ones that she drives, but if there are ones in the background. So
Mm.
there's the scene at the nightclub or wherever they were, where they go out into the parking lot, and in the parking lot they have to go through a series of. They wind up going through a series of autos to get to the. And I thought I had a picture of it, but
Or
I
she gets in the
didn't.
wrong one.
Yeah, she gets in the wrong one and crawls over. No,
Mhm.
I don't. I didn't have the scene from the parking lot, but all of those are Chrysler cars. Everything in the parking lot had to be Chrysler cars.
I read that also.
So this takes me down the darker part of this.
Okay.
When Martin Melcher died, he had pretty much controlled all of Doris Day's and accepted movies on her behalf, got her
Mm.
parts, or was basically her manager, and took the money that she earned in films and made really bad investments in it.
Mhm.
And I think some tax problems. So she completed her commitment, which included the Doris Day Show, which you
Mm.
might remember as a televised show for a period of
Mhm.
time,
Right.
and her to work her way out of debt, and to kind of get back pay what she owed. So kudos to her. Her son, Terry Melcher, and people, came out of the woodwork to say, yeah, Martin Melcher, your husband, was really kind of slimeball. We should have warned you a long time ago.
Mm.
But her son, Terry Melcher, who was actually a son from a previous marriage that Martin Melcher agreed to adopt, and then he changed his name. And I'm beginning to wonder whether the agreement to adoption was because he didn't want any external challenges to the financial stuff
Mm.
from a son. And
Mm.
so Terry Melcher stepped up, and Terry helped Doris Day. He's always very close to his mother. Their
Mhm.
relationship was close, but Terry Melcher stepped up and helped get her her financial affairs out of order or back in order.
In order.
Yeah, the I don't know if you know about Terry Melcher. Terry
I didn't know
Melcher,
that.
the
No.
son, Terry Melcher, the son, was kind of making his own way in the music industry, and he was known for helping produce the Byrds and
Oh.
the Bob Dylan versions of the songs for the Byrds, Tambourine Man,
Mm.
and then the Turn Turn Turn. So
Mm.
that bird sound from the Byrds, he was known for that
Mm.
production, and that got the attention of the Beach Boys. And Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. Brian Wilson has his own background story. I talk about it in Psychopath when I teach Psychopath. He has his own background story of mental illness and depression. And if you want to see
Mhm.
a movie about that, um, um, Mercy, God, I can't remember the name, what's in the title. Um, it stars John Cusack and another character actor that play Brian Wilson at two different times, two different periods in life. But he goes on to connect with Brian Wilson, and Brian Wilson had been uh, introduced to Charles Manson. And Charles Manson was really interested in getting into the music industry and
Mm.
was sending examples of his music. At one time, Brian Wilson, no, at one time, Terry Melcher went over to Brian Wilson's house. They were having a party, and it was all kind of Manson and the Manson clan.
Mm.
So Terry Melcher was a little weirded out by Charles Manson, and Doris Day encouraged him to kind of stay away from it, get out of there. Um,
Right.
he was staying at a house. He was staying at a house. He had his own home, and Doris Day said, "Move out. Find some other place to live. If they know where you live, go
Mhm.
someplace else." And
Mhm.
so he moved out. And who moved into that house? Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski.
Oh my God.
So Manson supposedly
Oh,
directed people to go to that house as kind of revenge for him being rejected by Terry Melcher as a record producer.
oh my gosh.
So yeah, that's a
That really
long
is a
chain.
dark path. My
That's a
God.
long chain to get
Yeah.
away from this movie, and I apologize to Richard Lee, 8495, but
Too bad.
yeah, but yeah, it's the Doris Day, Martin Melcher, Terry Melcher comes in. Terry has his own background in music, and then the connection to Manson, the place that he used to live. Supposedly, that's where Manson sent the people, thinking that he'd be taking revenge on Terry Melcher, and instead, it was Sharon Tate.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I would have never known any of that.
Yeah, well, the name Terry Melcher kind of cued me to kind of go down that rabbit hole and see what I could find.
While you were talking, I looked it up. I don't know if this is the movie you met, Love and Mercy.
Love and Mercy.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is really the Brian Wilson story and
Hmm.
early Beach Boys. Um, I avoided watching it for a long time because I didn't quite understand how he could be played by two characters at two different parts in his life.
Hmm.
But in that film, there is a psychologist, psychiatrist who abuses Brian Wilson. And that's the story I talk about in my advanced theories in psychopathology class because of the ethics that are involved in it. And unfortunately, most of my students' eyes glaze over when I talk about the Beach Boys. But you know,
Yeah, exactly.
there's no teaching them history of culture anymore. So, but it's a good film. I enjoyed it, and it's a film of redemption in it. Brian Wilson has an interesting story in of himself. So yeah, Doris Day, Martin Melcher, Terry Melcher. Terry Melcher went on to do some, I think, writing and also producing of films, contemporary films like Rush Hour 2 was one of them. There were a
Mm,
couple other films you can look up and see that Terry Melcher was involved
I'll have to do that.
in that production. So he kind of moved away from the music industry and moved more into the film industry. Probably when he was helping his mom get all the business that Martin had
Mm.
left her locked into to get done. So
And it's interesting you said about the financial problems, and in the movie, that was one of the minor points to the movie where he was trying to get her to understand the financial part of their relationship. And she said, "Well, I'm just not interested." He said, "Well, how much did you pay for a pound of ham?" She said, "I don't know. I didn't buy a pound of ham. I bought a half a pound." "Well, how much did that cost?" She said, "I don't know." So she paid no attention to the money part of their marriage. She didn't know what, the amortization of a
amortization.
mortgage meant. Yeah, I mean, she just didn't care. He wanted her to go to night school. She's like, "No, no, that's your part. You handle that part." And so now, like you say, now that kind of turned full circle for her in her own life, unfortunately.
So
Um,
how did you feel about the portrayal? The gender roles are, well, with the exception of Rock Hudson playing someone who's weakened by his own hypochondriac, but the kind of relationship between men and women. One comment that stood out for me was a question about infidelity. That you just ask for forgiveness and
mm-mm.
they'll forgive you and then they'll move on. So I was curious about that from your perspective.
Well, that would not go these days. I guess
Yeah.
that's what women, I hate to say, they put up with, because we've seen that in other movies as well. It's like they just kind of look to the side and say, "Oh, well, I've got a good provider. I've got a nice house. I don't have to work." They never worked for a living, so they just kind of turned a blind eye to it, which, obviously is I guess the way things were then, but certainly wouldn't be the way it is today. No, that bothered me. I was thinking it was the doctor who said, "Well, Judy, you just have to, accept it." And he said, "I don't know of any
Yeah.
wives that really would do that." He said, "But that's what you have to do. You just have to accept it and look the other way." So no, that didn't hit me right either. Definitely not.
Yeah, that was a question that I had for you as I
Mm-mm.
watched it this time. There were some strong statements about what women accept and what women don't accept, and sort of the
I'm not so
acceptance of
sure
infidelity.
they do or did during that time. I mean, that was certainly how it was in the movies. Whether or not it
Yeah.
was that way in real life, I don't know. But no, that didn't sit well with me by any means. And then in the end, when she just said, "Well, I choose to forgive you," it's like she just kept reversing herself. First, she was, hated him, was going to leave him, was
Hmm.
going to get a divorce, and then, she just went back and forth and back and forth. And that part of it I didn't like. She was too wishy washy and like, "Oh, everything's fine. I choose to forgive you." I thought, no, that's not the way it works.
Yeah, I was curious about that. I have one last piece, and then I want to kind of open it up if you have final things
Okay.
to share. From what I understood, that the title song performed by Doris Day was written by Hal David and Bert
Hmm.
Bacharach, and this was
Hmm.
one of their earliest collaborations.
Hmm.
Which, thinking in terms of the time and thinking in terms of the their ages at that time, yeah, probably could have easily been one of their earliest collaborations. When I saw that, I kind of listened to the song a little bit more intently than I normally would. But it does really have that sound of something uh, by Bacharach in a lot of
Hmm.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah. She sings in quite a few of her movies,
Yeah. Yeah.
which again I enjoy.
Yeah. What was I? I was saying something to my wife, Aileen, and I said Doris Day, and she said, "Oh," and I said some, uh, I talked about the financial thing with Martin Melcher, and she said, "Well, did she just que sera
Thanks.
sera?"
So
Uh,
yeah,
you know,
whatever will be, will be. Yeah.
yeah. Do you have anything more on the film?
Um. Well, while we were talking, I don't know if you noticed, I got distracted and looked down at my watch because my watch was ringing silently.
Hmm.
Someone was calling me during the podcast. I'm like, okay. Um. I thought it was interesting that every time Rock Hudson had to take a pill, he looked at his watch and a little buzzer went off. And I thought, even back then, there was a little alarm or a little buzzer on his watch, almost like a precursor to the Apple Watch. He
What
said, "Oh, it's
was
time to
there?
take a pill."
Did they have
What?
watches that had alarms on them?
I don't know. I never did. I don't know.
Yeah, and I never saw it. So I don't know if that was a kind of a trope for the movie that didn't
I
exist or
don't
not.
know. But he was always, because even on the golf course, Tony Randall said, "What is that?" He said, "It's time for me to take a pill." And he said, "Well, why bother? Why bother?" And then he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that." But yeah, that little buzzer was always going off on his watch.
Yeah, I was curious about that too. Um, and so I just typed it in. Yes, wristwatches with alarms absolutely existed in 1964, and they're already well established at that point.
Okay.
So, yeah, not a trope for the movie, and
Okay.
apparently they actually existed. I know I didn't have one. Of course, I was 7 years old. So,
Exactly. I didn't like to wear watches. I still don't love them, but I love my Apple Watch.
yeah.
A lot of reasons, but I didn't like wearing watches. It always bothered me, always got in the way. I'm always noticing little things about cars and such. This was another movie where she could just get in any car and start it, and take off. I guess again, people just left their keys in the car because that happened when they were at the golf course. And the car that they actually were driving, that convertible, when they were having their argument in the car about the other woman, and then he finally told her that he was dying supposedly. There was no rear view mirror in that car.
Yeah, it started off with a shot. I mean, the visual, and you don't want to have Doris Day
exactly
and Rock Hudson framed in a shot, and then have a rear view mirror hanging in between them. So I think that was the logic there.
Yeah, and at the golf course, I'm paying a lot of attention to the golf course because I'm on one frequently in the spring and summer. It was not a very well manicured golf course by any means, but they chased her when her golf course ran amok, and they chased her, and then of course the other guy rescues her, and then they go to the clubhouse to change clothes for lunch and drinks and all that, and they just left their golf carts sit there. They both just walked away from their golf carts and let them sit on the course. That's not something you would do.
Also, the shouting, when she shouts, "Hey, George, I'm up here, George." That's not necessarily golf course protocol.
No, you don't do that. No. You might shout "for" if you're, but no, you don't shout across the course, "Here I am, here I am." Yeah. Definitely. I wrote down a couple of lines that I thought were particularly funny.
Yeah.
In the beginning with the doctor, I thought the doctor scene was really good when he was saying, "I've got this pain in my chest." And the doctor says, "Well, he goes like this, is it a sharp pain? Mm-hmm. Is it a dull pain? Or does it grip like a vice?" He went, "Yes, yes, yes." And he said, No, you got to pick one." He said, "Well, I guess it's a sharp pain. It hurts like the devil when I press here." And he said, "Well, then don't press it.
Do it, yeah.
Don't press that."
That goes back to Groucho Marx. Come on.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Don't press. Okay.
That's a movie meme trope that's occurred in lots of films.
Okay. And I thought the doctor was funny because he kept lamenting about, he should have been an allergist. He should have been a cardiologist. He should have been a psychiatrist because, they make so much more money than he does. And he has to work these long hours. He said, "I know one, an allergist that built a $100,000 house on ragweed season alone." And he was always commenting that, I should have specialized in this and I should have done that. And when he was writing on Rock Hudson's chart, he was writing all this information. Rock Hudson was left-handed, by the way.
Huh.
I don't know if you noticed that.
No.
And he said, "Well, you're writing an awful lot of information on my chart if it's just indigestion." He said, "Well, the more I write, the more money I charge."
Anything else?
One more comment that has to do with just the way it was back then. The women were always playing bridge. They playing bridge, playing golf during the day. And when he was, he taped his goodbye to her on a tape recorder that she was going to supposedly play back after he was gone. He said, "Well, she can marry Bert after whatever her bridge club decides is a decent interval." I don't know if you caught that or not.
Yeah, as you were saying,
whatever society decides is right.
Yeah, as you were saying, this is how it was back then. This is how it was for a very slim portion of what society was. I mean, yes. I didn't grow up with golf clubs and bridge games and things like that. So, yeah, there's part of the mystique of this film is looking at that and making fun of it. And it's also, I think, for people who were going to the movies at that time, it's a different. They didn't go there because they all were living the lifestyle of Doris Day and Rock Hudson. They went there because maybe they wanted to fantasize about living that lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yeah, because 64 was, well, the the early 60s, and really the 60s altogether was rather tumultuous in
Mhm.
terms of what was going on.
Yeah.
The one thing I noticed was the comment to Levittown when he's
Hmm.
at the funeral director, and he says to Paul Lynde, he says, "Oh, it's like your own little Levittown,"
Hmm.
meaning all of the graves were kind of the same and styled and modeled. The stones were all modeled the same
Hmm.
for that purpose. And so I had to do some reference checks on that to figure out, because I'd heard it before in an Alan Sherman song. I can't remember which, if you remember that comedic songwriter, Alan Sherman, where he talks about everybody going down to Levittown. And apparently it was in Nassau, New York. There was Levitt built a bunch of houses that all looked the same because they were
Hmm.
doing these kind of modular ways of putting homes together, and they still exist in Nassau, New York, but they referred to it as Levittown. So yeah,
Yeah, I looked that up as well. And I also looked up the Mayo Clinic because she kept talking about going to the Mayo Clinic with him,
in Rochester,
and I thought,
Minnesota. Yeah.
yeah, but didn't she say when the plane lands in New York?
No, I paid attention to that too, because
Did she?
When she said Rochester, I had to kind of
She
go,
did.
wait a minute, it's in
Okay.
Minnesota. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think she alluded to New York. She just alluded to when the plane lands in Rochester.
Okay. All right. So that was right.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I didn't care for, and this is just a woman thing, her wig in the very beginning of the movie was terrible. She wore wigs throughout the whole movie, but that first one was just hideous. It was just so
Yeah.
obviously a wig. I just didn't
I,
think, and she's such a beautiful woman, it didn't do her any justice.
Aileen and I this morning, when we were driving around, I said we are going to cover this movie, and she gave me some impressions of Doris Day. Doris Day, at least at that time and in the films, were trying to represent sort of a virginal way of life,
Mm.
and she wears that ribbon in
With
her
the little
hair.
bow.
It looked
Yeah.
like she was a present, and I thought, well, that kind of is
Yeah.
a metaphor for the whole, opening the package kind of thing. But I just, yeah. And
Or a
I
little
can't,
dog.
yeah,
You know how
yeah,
they put them in little dogs, like little poodles?
yeah. And
Yeah.
so, that was her typecast in terms of that. I didn't know what were wigs and what were not wigs. I can't tell
Mm.
that very well, but it did seem like she had at least 10 hairstyle changes through this
Yes,
movie.
she did. Even in one day, she had many hairstyle changes.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
that was part of that. Terry Melcher was not, or excuse me, Martin Melcher was not appreciated by other people in the industry. I've already mentioned that. One of the
Mm.
things I read was that Sinatra kicked him off the set.
Oh.
They were in a apparently Doris Day and Sinatra were in a film, and he's just like, I'll do it, but he cannot be anywhere on the lot. And
Mm.
when Sinatra doesn't like you, that says a lot
That's bad,
um,
huh? Oh,
with that.
no, I didn't know that.
So yeah, I don't know what to think of this film. I think it's, if you haven't seen this genre, see it. It's
Hmm.
probably, of the three, probably the best to see. Um, and it's quick and it's painless and it doesn't require a lot of you have to follow a plot. It has a plot, which is really kind of
Hmm.
nice. Versus Pillow Talk, which I think was kind of all over the place, and people might
Hmm.
disagree with me on that. But yeah, I'm glad we ventured into this.
She certainly dressed better in Pillow Talk.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so
And it's
let's
a
talk.
feel good
What?
movie. It's just a
Yeah,
feel good movie. Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about the next movie, which is a feel bad movie.
Yeah. One extreme to the other.
So I don't want to give away too much on the next episode, but why don't you let us know what we're looking at?
We're going to watch Double Indemnity
From
with Fred
1944.
McMurray. Fred
Yep.
McMurray again.
And Barbara Stanwyck
Yeah.
and Edward G. Robinson. And I think this is like one of Robinson's
right.
best roles. Really.
Yes. Yes, you're right.
People talk about this film as one of the early film noir movies, in the sense of getting into kind of the darkness of human capacity. It is, I think, really. It's directed by Billy Wilder. We're dipping back in the Billy Wilder bin again. Written by Billy Wilder, Raymond Chandler, and James Cain, excuse me. When you said off show that you had never seen that, I was like, oh, you gotta, if we're talking Fred McMurray, you gotta see this one.
Yeah.
And then you went ahead and watched it, and
I
again,
did.
without giving away too much about it, it was. I love your enthusiasm to jump into it. I hope it startled you as movies should do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
In terms of pulling you in.
Yeah. I will watch it a few more times. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll catch that on the next episode of Fade to Chat, and be looking forward to that. And maybe if you hear this one, watch the movie and join us in a week or so, and we'll have that episode out. You can follow along, just like Richard Lee 8495 has, and you can add comments to us. You can find us at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@fade-to-chat. And you'll see all of the different movies that we've covered at this point, and enjoy your ability to listen along or watch along if you want to. This also comes out in media format, audio media format, so you can listen to it that way. Subscribe to us, and share your comments, and you email your reactions to the Pod Talk Network at gmail.com. And again, we're at youtube.com/@fade-to-chat. Stay tuned for more conversations, more deep dives, and more timely classics. Cindy, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Mark.
Being a part of this experiment that we're doing right here on Fade to Chat.